Well, good evening. My name is Christina Shutt, and I am proud to serve as Executive Director for the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. Tonight, we have a special program with a very special guest presenter who has been a longtime friend of the ALPLM and a strong supporter of our mission to share Lincoln's legacy and the diverse history of Illinois with the world. And of course, if you saw the announcement, you know I'm talking about our state's First Lady, M.K. Pritzker. Among her many accomplishments, M.K. has served as a leader of the Pritzker Family Foundation with a mission of fostering solutions in the areas of early childhood development and women's health. Through the foundation, MK was also involved in shaping the strategic plan for Northwestern Pritzker School of Law with a focus on scholarships and grants, social justice, entrepreneurship, and civil and human rights initiatives. MK founded the nonprofit Evergreen Invitational, a sanctioned equestrian show jumping competition that raised over $6 million for the Northwestern Memorial Hospital, focusing exclusively on funding women's health care initiatives. Additionally, MK has taken on issues surrounding justice-involved women. Through her work at the foundation, MK has supported organizations such as the Women's Justice Initiative and remains dedicated to improving the lives of women and children affected by the justice system in her role as First Lady of the state of Illinois. MK previously worked in Washington, D.C. on the staffs of former U.S. Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle and former Governor and U.S. Senator Bob Kerrey. She graduated with a BA from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and attended graduate school at the Art Institute of Chicago. She has been married to JB for 30 years, and they are parents to two wonderful children. Just as a reminder to you to please silence your mobile devices. A Q&A session will follow the presentation, and afterwards, MK has generously offered to sign copies of her new book. If you haven't purchased one in advance, no worries, of course. We'll have additional copies for sale just outside of the theater. Now, please join me in welcoming our First Lady and the author of the new book, A House That Made History, the Illinois Governor's Mansion, Legacy of an Architectural Treasure. Ladies and gentlemen, First Lady M.K. Pritzker.
Thanks so much. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I'd like to thank the ALPLM for hosting this event so we could all spend this evening together. And I'm just going to start out by telling you why I wrote this book. So when my husband was first elected to office, I think I'd come to Springfield with my children on the middle school tour, and that was about the extent of the exposure I had to Springfield. So I remember walking up that long driveway and the size of the house, and I kind of just hit me like, oh my gosh, I'm now responsible for this huge house, and what have I gotten myself into? And here I am at the Abraham Lincoln Library. I mean, it's just crazy how life works. So we went into the house, and I knew the house had recently been redone by Diana Rauner, and I have to say, give her a shout out because she did an amazing job. She raised a lot of money and in quick order fixed that house. She did the roof, the HVAC, and the windows, and really cleaned the place up and the new landscaping. So I was very fortunate that I inherited kind of a well-baked cake, right? But when we toured the house, I could tell that it wasn't quite finished on the inside, and it was basically painted off-white and gray, and it didn't have much furniture. And my husband's a very gregarious guy, and he loves to entertain and have people over all the time. And so I kind of had the mandate from him that he wanted the house to be kind of warmed up and some comfortable furniture so he could entertain. So I enlisted a good friend of mine, Michael Smith, who is a world-renowned designer, and he worked on the White House for 8 years with the Obamas. And so he actually came with me that day when we first toured the house. So that's how this all started. And we started to make our plans to warm up the house, and I started to learn more about the house, and I came over here to the Abraham Lincoln Library, and I started learning more about Springfield and the history of Springfield. And to be honest with you, I fell in love with this town. I think this is just a wonderful place to be, and I love being here, and the people of this town have been so kind to us, and I thank you all for that. You've made us feel so welcome. And I just really wanted to do a good job with this house and kind of give it as a gift to the people of Illinois and to the people of Springfield and support the revitalization of the downtown of Springfield. So I knew I wanted to write a book, and I thought it would be just like a coffee table book with beautiful pictures. But as I said, I started to research the people who lived there before me and all the incredible first ladies and all the historic events that happened in this town. And I knew I had to include those stories in my book, as well as the beautiful pictures of the house that showcases all the wonderful things in Illinois. So the program for our house, we decided, first of all and foremost, was a space that all Illinoisans could be proud of. So we needed to create spaces that worked for doing the business of the state of Illinois, primarily the governor and meeting with the legislators and dignitaries to do the business of the people. I wanted the house to showcase the best of Illinois, including art, artisans, contemporary and historic works, and highlight the architecture and, of course, the gardens and the grounds. So now I'd like to show you some of the historical photos of the house and highlight some of the residents that lived there. So this first picture is a close-up of Abraham Lincoln. This is a portrait that hangs in the foyer of the mansion. I'd just like to read this quote to you. "To this place and the kindness of these people, I owe everything. Here I have lived a quarter of a century and have passed from a young to an old man. Here my children have been born and one is buried. I now leave, not knowing when or whether ever I may return." So this is what Abraham Lincoln said on the back of the train as he left Springfield to be inaugurated President of the United States. And I think it really speaks to the spirit of this town and how much credit Abraham Lincoln gives this area to his development as a man and the character that he possessed. And I really wanted to show this picture and read you this quote, because that is kind of how I feel about this town as well, and about the great honor I've had to serve as your First Lady and restore this house for the people of Illinois. So moving along. So this is the first picture we have, first photograph of the house. The house was built in 1855. It's an Italianate style with a Greek Revival interior. And John Mills Van Osdell was the architect of the house, and he was from Chicago. And this was one of his early creations, and he became very popular after the Chicago fire and did a lot of commissions in Chicago. Moving on to the next slide. On the left-hand side is a picture of Joel Mattison and his family. They were the first residents of the house. And the house was built as a governor's residence, and he lived there with his family for a few years. And after he was governor, Governor William Bissell was inaugurated. And what's interesting about Governor Bissell is he was very close friends with Abraham Lincoln. And so Abraham Lincoln spent time in the house working with Governor Bissell. He helped Governor Bissell write his speeches and helped him govern the state, and they were very close friends. Governor Bissell actually died in the house, and he was visited by Abraham Lincoln on his deathbed, and he laid in state in the front parlor of the mansion. He died on March 18th in 1860. This is a picture of Governor Richard Oglesby, and he was 3 times elected governor of the state of Illinois. And on the right-hand side is a picture of his first wife, Anna, who was the second person to die in the house, and she died of tuberculosis. And there's a rumor around Springfield, I don't know if you've all heard this, that there's a ghost in the mansion, and it's rumored to be Anna. I can report I've never seen her, but maybe she's there. Maybe she guided me in writing this book. If she's there, she's a friendly ghost, because I haven't had any scary things happen to me in the mansion. Another interesting thing about Governor Oglesby is he led the state, and we were the first state to ratify the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. And he also was very instrumental and repealed many of the state's black laws, which targeted black people unfairly. And he's really known as one of the most well-regarded governors of the state of Illinois. The second time he ran, he appointed himself United States Senator. So he ran with the lieutenant governor, and they had a plan that Oglesby would leave and become United States Senator. Isn't that right, Ian? And the lieutenant governor became governor. So another interesting fact about Governor Oglesby, he was also very close with Abraham Lincoln, and he just happened to be in Washington, D.C., visiting the president the same day the president went to Ford's Theater and was assassinated. And Governor Oglesby ran across the street and kept vigil at the house and where Lincoln passed away. And so Oglesby was a counselor to Mary and helped make the arrangements for the funeral processional that went across the United States. And in fact, the procession went right in front of the mansion and was instrumental in picking the place where Abraham is interred at Oak Ridge Cemetery here in Springfield. Another interesting visitor to the mansion is Frederick Douglass, who we all know was a well-regarded orator and statesman and abolitionist, social reformer. He was welcomed to the mansion in 1872 by Governor Palmer, which is an amazing thing as well, because a lot of people turned Frederick Douglass away and they weren't really interested in what he had to say. But not here in Springfield. I'm very proud of that history, that he was welcomed here and into a beautiful reception and welcomed by the governor and all the statesmen here in Springfield. So this is a picture of, getting back to Governor Oglesby, who left to become senator, and then he was elected for the third time and came back and lived in the mansion with his second wife, whose name was Emma. And Emma was quite a character. Emma was an Anglophile. She loved anything English, and she'd have these crazy parties where people would dress up as Dickens characters, and they'd have these very fanciful parties on the mansion lawn and in the house. And she actually was the daughter of a very wealthy cattle baron, and so they loved to have their portraits painted. And these are two portraits that Emma had painted of herself in kind of, you can see the airman fur trim on her robe, and she's kind of painted in the Royal English style. And her kids are dressed up with the badminton costumes. I don't know about you, but I could never get my kids to pose like this. So I think she was quite a character. And this is a picture of Florence Pfeiffer, who was the daughter of Governor Pfeiffer. He was in office from 1889 to 1889 to 1893. And she was quite rambunctious and kind of a tomboy. And she would slide down this banister and pop in on her husband's parties or her father's parties and inauguration and any meetings he had, and she just would interject herself into everything. And she had a pony named Dixie, and she would ride Dixie up the front stairs of the mansion into the mansion. And she also kept a pet alligator in the fountain at the mansion. And Florence turned out to be a political force herself. And she started the Parent-Teacher Association in Bloomington, where she moved after she started a family of her own. And in 1924, 4 years after the passing of the 19th Amendment, she was the first woman elected state senator to the State House here in Illinois. So she occupies a great place in history here as well. So Governor John Tanner, from 1897 to 1901 was his tenure, and he was the first, he and his wife Cora, they did a major renovation to the house. So this is kind of the first major changes to the house. And when I say major changes, they did some major changes. So what they did is they wanted the house to be remodeled into the fashion of the day. And so the original house had that beautiful cupola on it, and they built a mansard roof, and they just buried the cupola inside the roof. And they also changed the front stairs of the house, where they added a new portico and kind of that double staircase. And the other really important thing that they did was they painted the house a stone color, kind of a stone, kind of white color. And they did that because they wanted the house to resemble the White House in Washington, D.C. Cora Tanner also changed the interior of the house as well and redecorated it. She took out the elliptical staircase and installed a rectangular staircase that was the fashion of the day, which was modeled after the staircase at Fontainebleau in France. So there was a lot going on. So here's a picture of, this is a contemporary picture of the cupola that's buried inside the mansard roof, which you can still see today. This is a contemporary picture of that looking up the staircase. And on the other side is a picture of what the rectangular staircase looked like after the Tanner remodel. And I think that's the Stratton's dog. This was the earliest picture the best picture I could find, so it was many years later. So a little bit about Cora Tanner. Sorry, it's spinning here. So Cora Tanner, who was married to Governor Tanner, who did this remodeling, was a very fashionable lady, probably my favorite first lady that I learned about. She was written up from coast to coast when she was a single woman. She was very well educated, could speak several languages. She was the most eligible maiden to be married, and she was talked about from coast to coast in the United States. And she married Governor Tanner 2 weeks before he was inaugurated, and they had a huge inauguration celebration with a parade, and I think 50,000 people came, and the flowers, and it was just an amazing event, and she was very, very stylish. And she also built, during that remodeling, she loved horses, and she built the stable, which is now the coach house of the mansion. It was remodeled later on, but this is a drawing. I don't have a picture of what that stable looked at, but we have an architect's drawing of what that stable looked like, and it was very pretty. She brought just a cosmopolitan flair to everything she did and was really well regarded. She's also known as a social reformer because at the time she spoke out against lynching and the mob mentality of the South against Black people. And this was quite amazing at the time because if you can imagine, women in 1901 couldn't even vote. So she made national news for being an outspoken woman. So again, here we have another amazing person that comes from Springfield speaking out. I'm just very proud of that legacy here. So moving on, the next governor to occupy was Governor Yates II. And in 1901, Vice President Theodore Roosevelt came to Springfield. And you can see a picture on the front porch. This is when a few weeks before President McKinley was assassinated. So just 2 weeks after this picture was taken, he became president of the United States. And the Yates, too, I think were very fanciful because Theodore Roosevelt, as president, came back to Springfield to visit. And you can see this shot of the interior. I don't know if you can see the Roosevelt, and I think it's in flowers, of this bewildering decoration. It's quite a lot. And this is the table set for, I think, a luncheon for President Roosevelt. So in 1908 was the year of the terrible Springfield race riot that occurred here. And up here is a picture of what happened here in Springfield. And the race riot was sparked by an allegation of rape and murder against 2 Black men, one of whom was tried and convicted and hanged, and the other freed after his accuser recanted. The riot lasted for 3 days. What's interesting about the mansion's role in the race riot was this gentleman here, Clarence Liggins, who was an employee of the state. He was much beloved and worked for several different elected officials here in Springfield. He actually hid out in the mansion with his family as this riot took place, and the staff at the mansion gave him refuge and his family. And he was kind of a character and really loved, and it's reported that he had a cane that shot bullets. So if you can imagine him walking around Springfield with a cane that shot bullets. Another story I came across was the story of William Donegan, who actually was the most successful, or one of the most successful Black persons here in Springfield at the time. And he made shoes. He was a cobbler. And it's reported that he actually made Abraham Lincoln's boots. And he was a very successful, prosperous businessman. And so during this riot, they went after him, and they actually lynched him and killed him across the street from his house, which is now on the Capitol complex. And I thought it was really important to include him in the book as well. A lot of these stories, I think, have been forgotten, and I thought it was really important to include them in the book. So moving on to the Governor Frank Loudon administration was the next time the house was remodeled. And what is interesting about the Loudons is they hired a very famous landscape architect who developed the prairie-style landscaping. And his name was O.C. Simmons, and he was from Chicago, and he was very friendly with the Loudons because Governor Loudon married Florence Pullman, who was the daughter of George Pullman from the Pullman Railway. And they had hired O.C. Simmons to work on their summer house, Sinisippi Farm, which is north of here. And so they totally changed the landscape of the house. They took the fence down around the house and installed this prairie-style landscaping. And he also installed these awnings, which you can see in the picture. And he brought a cast iron fountain that was over at the Capitol complex to the front of the mansion, as you can see in the picture. And we still have that fountain today. It's on the side of the house in the garden, and that's a contemporary picture of this same fountain today. First Lady Loudon also remodeled the inside of the house and redecorated, and these are two pictures of what the interiors of the house looked like in around 1920. And Florence was from a very wealthy family, and she used a lot of her own money to redecorate the house as a gift to the people of Illinois. And I think it's important to recognize that and thank her for all the things she did. The next interesting person I wanted to talk about is Governor Henry Horner, who is my husband's favorite. And Henry Horner was the first Jewish governor here in Illinois, and he steered Illinois through the Great Depression, and he's a well-regarded person in the history of Illinois for putting us back in a fiscally responsible state while being somebody who had a lot of humanity and cared about people. So he showed he could do both. And he was very friendly with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who came to Springfield to visit. And here's a picture of FDR on the front of the house in the portico, and the townspeople that came to listen to his speech. I just think this is a great picture. And FDR was here visiting to address the drought situation. There was a terrible drought going on in Illinois at the time, and he came to talk about that. Governor Horner was such an interesting person. He loved Abraham Lincoln and collected everything Lincoln, and he kept his collection in the house. And this is a picture of Governor Horner standing in front of his Lincoln collection, which is now on the second floor of the mansion. We now have this as the Lincoln bedroom. And what is interesting about this is when Henry Horner died, he left his entire collection to the people of Illinois, and it really became the cornerstone of where we are today, the Abraham Lincoln Library. So we have him to thank for that. I also just want to mention that Clarence Liggins, the man who hid out in the mansion during the race riots, also was very close with Governor Horner. And when Governor Horner passed away, he was in office, and he passed away in, I think it was Winnetka, and Clarence Liggins dressed him for his burial and accompanied his body from Winnetka back here for his burial. So that's how important Clarence Liggins was. He was just beloved by everyone. And I also threw in a picture here of Barack Obama here at the opening of the Abraham Lincoln Library. So this is a picture of what is now the Lincoln bedroom, where the Henry Horner Library was housed at one point. And what's interesting about this room is reportedly the furniture is believed to be from Abraham Lincoln, the bed and the dresser in this room. And we're so fortunate to have it in the mansion and have our own Lincoln bedroom. Also in this room, there's a picture of Governor Bissell to the left of the bed. And to the right of the bed there is a picture of a portrait of Colonel Edward Baker. And Colonel Edward Baker was a really close friend of Abraham Lincoln. And Colonel Baker was so close to the Lincolns that the Lincolns named their second son after him. They named him Edward Baker Lincoln. And this portrait, or actually, Colonel Edward Baker was killed during the Civil War. And a mutual friend of theirs had this portrait painted of Colonel Edward Baker and went to Washington and gave this portrait to Abraham Lincoln in the White House. So this portrait actually hung in the White House. Then Mary Todd Lincoln actually gave it to the state, and it now hangs in the Lincoln bedroom at the mansion. Moving along to the 1950s, this is a picture of Adlai Stevenson, who I think we all know that name. He was a much beloved governor and revered public speaker, and he ran for president of the United States and ran his presidential campaign out of the mansion and out of Springfield here. And he had his office in the lower level of the mansion. And what's interesting about this is this room where he's pictured now has been turned into the governor's dining room. And so this is the same window that was just in the previous picture. And during the round of renovation, they turned this into a dining room. And here we have Michael Smith and I commissioned this historic scene wall covering, which shows historic scenes of Illinois, and it's in geographical order. So if you come over to the mansion and look at this wall covering, you will see Graceland Cemetery. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. I don't even need my notes. I flipped through these without even checked my notes. So you'll see Galena, Starved Rock State Park, Chicago and the World's Fair, the University of Illinois Champaign, Garden of the Gods, Shawnee National Forest, Mississippi River, and on the Mississippi River you'll see Mark Twain and Huck Finn. And here is a close-up of the wall covering, and I bet you all can see where this is. This is Springfield and the old state capitol and part of the Mississippi River there. So next I have a picture of the mansion during the William Stratton administration when they painted the house bright white. So I thought it was really important for you all to see what the house looked like. It looks a lot different, doesn't it? It's important to note that Shirley Stratton was the first lady to open up the house to tours. She really developed the public tour and opened the house to everyone, and so we have her to thank for that as well. So at the beginning of the Stratton administration, there was lots of rumblings that they were trying to tear the house down. A lot of people wanted the house to be torn down. And Shirley Stratton just would have none of it, and we really can credit her for saving the house. And she really directed the plan of what you see today, where they added a huge addition onto the back. But before that happened, and they started the construction, the Strattons hired a very famous photographer to come and take some pictures of the interiors of the house. And these are examples of those pictures. And actually, the troopers found these in the security closet at the mansion and brought them to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, what are these? And I didn't know that they were Richard Nickel Prince, who's a very, very famous architectural photographer. And his archives are actually at the Art Institute. So I actually found the original negatives at the Art Institute and figured out that these indeed were Richard Nickel prints. And so now we framed them and they're hanging in the mansion. But this kind of gives you an idea of what the mansion looked like in 1970 before they did the major 1970s remodeling. So this is the Richard Ogilvie administration. I'm sorry, they're the ones that did the major remodeling. That was what the house looked like before they did the remodeling. So here's a picture of the remodeling project. The first thing they did was they decided to strip off the multi-layers of paint. You can imagine what a big project that was, and that's what's going on the side of the house there. And the other picture is a picture of Governor Ogilvie, First Lady Dorothy Ogilvie, James Hickey, and Lowell Anderson, who are very important to the historic preservation movement here in Springfield. They were the instigators of restoring the old state capitol. Remember, I don't know if many of you know, they took that apart brick by brick and rebuilt it, and they ran that project. So Mrs. Ogilvie was so impressed with them, she hired them to come over to the mansion and help her with her project. So this is a picture of her and Monty Hall in the library, which they added in this 1970s renovation. They added a library, they added a ballroom. I think I have a picture here of the, I'm sorry. This is the 1970s finished remodeling. So you can see they added onto the back porch, the whole back part of the house. So when they did this, it enlarged the house so much that the Illinois Governor's Mansion became the largest governor's mansion in the United States with this addition. So part of that renovation remodeling, they added on this beautiful library, which a gentleman by the name of Monty Hall from Decatur, he fashioned this beautiful paneling out of black walnut from Southern Illinois. And this is how that room looks today. They also added on this large ballroom, which we use for many events at the mansion. And above this space, they added on a private apartment for the governor and their family to live, which is outside of the public rooms of the mansion. And what's interesting about this picture is this gorgeous painting of Abraham Lincoln, which has a very interesting history. So this beautiful painting is a copy of the painting that hangs in the White House in the state dining room. This painting was painted by George Healy in 1864-65, and it belonged to the Lincoln family. And it was always Mary Todd's wish that this painting would go to the White House. So in the 1930s, they donated it to the White House, but before they gave it to the White House, they had a local Washington, D.C. artist make a copy of it. Her name was Catherine Pritzker. So this is the actual copy of the painting that it is now hanging in the ballroom at the mansion. And Mary Todd Lincoln's descendants gave it to the state of Illinois, and that is where it is today. So it's probably one of the most famous portraits of Abraham Lincoln. So also during that 1970s renovation, they took donations from all across the state. A lot of women participated in fundraising and helped decorating the newly refurbished mansion in 1970. And the women of Kankakee did a fundraiser, and they bought this gorgeous Zubair wall covering and hung it in the newly created second floor sitting room. So the women of Kankakee were very taken with Jackie Kennedy's remodeling of the White House, and this is the same pattern wall covering that is now in the White House, still to this day. And so we call this the Kankakee Room in honor of these women. And here's a close-up of the wall covering, so you can get an idea of just how beautiful it is. So this wall covering is made in France, and it's printed. It's for hundreds of years been made the same way. It's actually a wood block print. So each of the wood blocks are carved in the pattern, and each color is a different print. So if you could imagine how long it takes to make this wall covering, it's really beautiful. So now we're up to the Bruce Rauner administration, and as I said in my opening remarks, we have a lot to thank Diana Rauner for, because she raised a lot of money and really, again, saved the house and put in new HVAC and a new roof and windows. And here's a picture of that remodeling. They decided not to put the original cupola back. They left the hidden cupola. They did change the front part of the house, and I have to say, she really did an amazing job, and I'm just really grateful to her for handing me a beautifully baked cake that I could decorate. So, and as I said, I hired, actually I didn't hire Michael Smith, he donated his services to the state of Illinois. And here's his picture. I think he's such a cute guy, and I had a lot of fun working with him. And he is just world-renowned and really well-known for his work on the White House. So now comes the fun part. We're going to do a little before and after. So this is the east parlor, would be on the left. That's what the east parlor looked like when I arrived. And on the right is the newly redecorated east parlor that Michael Smith and I did together. So this is the Lincoln parlor, what it looked like in 2019 when we arrived here in Springfield. And this is the newly redecorated Lincoln parlor. Warmed it up. And I have the APLM to thank for a lot of these artworks in this room. It's all Abraham Lincoln. I like to joke that I think I have a crush on Abraham Lincoln. I have his picture everywhere. So this is our favorite room in the house. We spend a lot of time in this room. We love the color, and it has beautiful light. And I'll just call your attention to that beautiful modern sculpture that's in the room that was actually made for that space by Richard Hunt, who's a Chicago artist. He's a black artist, probably the most famous black sculptor in the world. And he's from Chicago, and he fashioned this beautiful piece just for that room. It's called Growing and Flowing. This is the music parlor in 2019. And this is the music parlor today. So I really tried to take some modern and contemporary art and mix it in with historic artifacts of the house. It really blends well in a classical interior, and in this room we have the self-portrait of Gertrude Abercrombie, who was a Chicago artist, and she was associated with the University of Chicago, and she was very involved in the jazz age, hung around a lot of jazz musicians. She was kind of a cool gal and very friendly with Gertrude Stein and that whole art scene, and she was herself a painter, and she's become really well known now, and her portraits really command, or paintings command, a very high price in today's market. She's really become very well known. And on the right-hand side is a Carl Worsom, the bright yellow painting. He was a Chicago imagist, part of what they call the Harry Hu group, also a very famous person in art history. And the piano was donated by a friend of mine, Linda Johnson. Her father was John Johnson, who started Ebony and Jet magazine. So if you can imagine all the people who played John Johnson's piano, I mean, I can't even imagine. Little Richard, maybe, I don't know. He had everyone in his office. So she donated that piano to the mansion. We're so lucky to have it, and we use it for all kinds of celebrations, Christmas time, Christmas carols, and things like that. So I thank her for that. This is the state dining room. So in the 1970s, this was 2 rooms, and when they did that major remodeling, they took the wall down and made one big giant room. And this is what it looked like in 2019. And this is what it looks like today. And this next picture is just kind of a fun picture of the elliptical stairway. So we just added a little more wood flooring, and we changed out the yellow and white concrete tile on the lower level to some marble tile, which is of the period. There used to be a marble wainscoting on that first level, which we didn't put back, but we paid homage to that with the floor. This is the next slide is another dramatic change. So if it'll turn. So this is on the second floor from 2019. This is what they called the children's bedroom, and you can see it's so 1970s, right? It's that red flocked wall covering. And this is how it looked in 2019. And Michael and I decided we thought we needed a Chicago room to pay homage to the great architectural movement and the great people that lived in the state from the modernist movement. So we created the Chicago room, which is this room. So this room pays homage to Frances Elkins. I don't know if many of you know who Frances Elkins was, but she was the sister of David Adler, who's a really famous Chicago architect. And Frances Elkins was his sister, and she was equally as talented as her brother, but not as well known. And this room really is an honor to her. And we used the silver block wall covering that she used a lot on the walls, and those beds are actually a copy of an original Frances Elkins bed that Michael Smith actually owned. So we had it copied, and now we have 2 of them in the room. And that cabinet is a design of Samuel Marks, who was a really famous modernist architect that worked in Chicago in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And this cabinet is one of his masterpieces. And there was a book written about him, and this cabinet, this actual cabinet, is in that book as his masterpiece. So we refashioned the red flocked wallpaper into this Chicago room. And we use this as a guest room. So people, when they come visit, they stay in this room. Now we're going to jump down to the lower level. This is the reception room in 2019 and the reception room today. So this room is right next door to the governor's dining room. So we kind of pulled some of the colors out of that room and had this wall covering made. This is a very interesting firm called Adelphi. They do historic wall covering and historic patterns, and they actually custom colored this for us for this room. And I use this room a lot for visitors. We have tea and have meetings in this room because it's so comfortable. So this is the First Lady's office in 2019. The desk was a little small for me. And here it is today. So we added some grass cloth wall covering and a larger desk, and I added a piece of modern art in there. It's a Judy Ledgerwood. She's a professor at the Art Institute and a very well-regarded female artist. today. So I'm really fond of that piece. This is the governor's office, which is right adjacent to the First Lady's office, and this is what it looked like in 2019. And here's a picture of JB at work at the office, refashioned. So the next slide, so this is a picture of all the different kind of periods of the house. In the middle, of course, is today, and you can see the original picture from 1855. I think that's up in the right-hand corner to when it was really painted bright white in the 50s. And lower left corner, that was after the Tanner renovation when they buried the cupola. And in the bottom corner there is what the house looked like in 1970 after the major addition. So you can kind of get an idea of how the house changed over the years. So in closing, I would just like to tell you that the Illinois Governor's Mansion welcomes you. We hope you come and book a tour. We're open during the week, and anytime you'd like to come, you should book a tour and come visit. We'd love to have you. And if you can't make it over to the mansion, you can see a video tour that is just up on YouTube. If you search my name, it's put out by a company called Homeworthy, who came to visit, and it's kind of a little tour of the mansion. You can see that online. And I would also just like to thank Michael Smith for donating his wonderful time and talent to the people of Illinois to create the wonderful mansion and its new interiors. And to Rizzoli, who published the book about the mansion and its history, and the publisher Charles Meyer. So I'd be happy to take any questions now. I hope I didn't bore you all.
Just raise your hand. We'll come around with the microphone. If you've got a question for the First Lady, Mrs. Pritzker, just raise your hand. I'll come right to you, right over here, second row.
How many staff does it take to support the mansion and grounds and cooking meals and changing sheets?
You'd be really surprised. Not that many. Really? So there's two housekeepers that we have. We do not have a cook. We have we have a house manager who runs the office, and we have Thad, who basically does support things. He's not really a butler, he's more than a butler, he's sort of an assistant house manager. And then there's an engineer who runs the equipment. And we're supported by docents that are from the Department of Natural Resources, so they kind of come and go, and they go to different sites to give tours around Springfield. So really not that many.
Any other questions?
Oh, and we have a horticulturist too, I forgot, Harry. How could I forget Harry? He's amazing.
So you already mentioned that your favorite room in the house is the Lincoln Room. I'm curious, is there any one painting or any object in the room that speaks to you more than the others, or do you just like the room in general?
Well, I like the room in general, but there's one particular painting in there that I love. It's the painting by Reverend Clover, who was a reverend here in Springfield that knew Abraham Lincoln, and he painted his portrait from life, so it's a very rare piece. And it shows Abraham Lincoln before he became president, and he looks so young. And you can really see what a kind, gentle soul he is, and I think it's my favorite thing in the whole house. So I hope you all come over and see it.
Hello there. I live about 90 minutes away, and I love coming into Springfield. And I had the opportunity to tour the mansion back in the spring, and it was absolutely gorgeous. It just seemed very happy. I had been there when you showed the old pictures, and I couldn't believe the difference. You did a very, very good job. What do you do with the old furniture? Because there was a lot. Is there do you store them, bring them pieces back in?
Well, what we did was first of all, we cataloged everything and took dimensions and pictures of every piece we had. And we obviously brought in new pieces that were more comfortable. The things that we didn't use are cataloged and stored off-site, so that if the next administration or 20 years from now somebody wants to bring some of those pieces back, they can do so, and it's all very well organized and cataloged. But we
Anyone
really
else?
tried to reuse a lot.
Anyone else? Right here. If you have a question, continue to hold your hand up. I'll come to you.
I did give tours there for a while in the governor's mansion. The children's room that you made into the Chicago room, which is beautiful, where are those paintings hanging of Emma, Gillette, Oglesby, and the boys?
They're in the governor's suite. So we just moved them to a different room.
I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, going once, going twice. Again, for those of you that have the slip that you got, if you purchased a book in advance, we'll be right outside the theater by the big Lincoln portrait to have those signed, and I believe we have a few extra copies as well. So somebody that didn't purchase one in advance, you might be able to buy a copy before those run out. So we'll see you afterwards in just a moment. But again, let's give a very big thank you to our First Lady, M.K. Pritzker.
Thank you. Thank you all.